Hey, co-host Adrian here, and out of all the thousands of available podcasts, you're listening to this one because you love Evansville. Well, we obviously love Evansville too, but we can't tell these stories without the support of people like you. So before we get started with today's episode, we want to give you the opportunity to partner with our storytelling work here at For Evansville. Your donation will allow us to continue to share these unique stories about how people are working together to make Evansville a place where everyone can flourish. And the cool news is right now we have a $50,000 match, so any gift you give will be doubled. So help us complete the match before the end of the year by going to forevansville.org/podcast partner, or you can find the link in the show notes. Thanks for being For Evansville.
Hey, welcome to the For Evansville podcast, a podcast where we learn the needs of our city, and we also get to talk to a lot of people who are for Evansville, and we're excited to do that today with two folks from CrossPoint Polymers. Adrian, you want to tell us a little bit more?
So we have Ben Schmidt, who's the CEO there, and Ryan Nunn, the HR manager. And when I was looking through your website, I thought it was interesting that you had two categories of what we do and who we are. And those were very different. You guys work in the recycling plastics industry, right, but yet who you are was different because it said, one of the things that struck me, it said CrossPoint strives to help empower the marginalized through engaged partnerships, both locally and globally. Mm-hmm. So first, Ryan, I want to get into what your job is because it doesn't seem like a typical HR manager of a company. So if you could just describe what you do.
Oh, man. So what I get to do really is I get to pastor people. So my history is I've been a pastor at a church, local church in Henderson, Evansville, One Life Church for a long time. And whenever CrossPoint called and said, hey, I want to have some lunch, I just want to bring something up by you, my initial response was, I'm not a stereotypical HR guy. It's just not who I am. Like, I'm not the super admin, that type of thing. And
he was very clear about that.
Very up front. I tried to be very upfront about that. But whenever I got to sit down and talk to Ben about what CrossPoint is, the who we are side of CrossPoint, because I know nothing about plastics, but I very much love people, and God's wired me to love people. At least, I just can't not. I guess it's who I am. And so, but when I hear about CrossPoint Polymers, this plastics company that's trying to do things to help people, man, it would just unlock some pretty cool things inside of me. And so I was able to join the team and join the work that they're doing. And so really what I get to do, there is a lot of HR things that I'm doing better than some may anticipate I would have on some of that. But through the HR process, that enables me to get to know people. Like that helps me build rapport and trust. And then we get to move kind of on down the field, if you will, with helping them grow professionally, but also personally. Like my first week, I would sit across the table at my desk from people who barely knew me, but they knew what I used to do, and they knew what I was brought in to do, and they know CrossPoint as a culture. And so we talked about life, and we're thinking about, here's some things going on in my life. Like, what are your thoughts? And that was week one. Wow. So I think it needs to be said that I want to make sure that, like, I have the opportunity to step into a culture that I believe God placed on, the original launch team of CrossPoint from day one.
Mm. So why is that culture important to you as CEO?
That culture is really what our business is about. So I don't want to steal the thunder of your original intro and what you were talking about, but who we are and what we do are really two pretty different things. I mean, right. We make plastic pellets. That's what we do. Okay,
super interesting.
But yeah, it may not sound that exciting. Okay, and we have some fantastically talented people. So I always hesitate to downplay that as if it's not important, because it is. It's really cool. There's science to it. There's a lot of people in our organization that are very talented and do some really, really neat things. So again, I don't mean to disparage that, but I worked for a company that did the same thing. Okay, before I left and started up CrossPoint. So there was a question, honestly, did Evansville really need another plastics company? I mean, this this area is known as Plastics Valley. There's so many plastics companies just within the city of Evansville, and then you expand out a little bit. We're everywhere. So,
right.
Did we really need another plastics company? And my answer was always yes. But we needed a plastics company that did other things rather than just make pellets. So why is it important to me? Honestly, personally, I spend less hours now than I did when we first started the company. But there's been days where I'm there 12 to 14 hours, a day. And what's important in life, what really, really matters. Do I like making a pellet? Sure, I do. But it's really about relationships. It's about the people. It's about the effect that we can have kind of thing. And I spend, unfortunately, probably more time at work than I do even with my family, the people that I love the most. So I personally want to do something significant or something that matters with that time. And so the pellets are the vehicle. What really matters about what we do is just loving on people. We'll get into other, I'm sure, areas about who we hire and who our employees are and that kind of thing. But we genuinely want to be a family. I mean, it's, yeah. So do it because it matters. I guess is my I don't know, that's a good answer, but that's the answer.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people could relate to what you said about I spend a lot of time at work, and maybe the thing that I do is not the thing that I would describe as like my life passion, right? And for some people, I think that's a little bit of a hang up or a source of maybe even unhappiness that people have with their job, because it's instilled in us at a pretty young age, right? That you want to find a job where you can feel like you're doing something that really matters to you. And to your point, the work that you guys do does really matter, and it adds value to people's lives, but it might not be reflective of the passion that's in everybody's heart necessarily, And so I'm curious, what were some of the key ingredients for shaping a culture where people could feel like the work that I do every day and being a part of this company is something that kind of hits on some of those passions and is like personally invigorating in the sense of I feel like I'm kind of doing what I was made to do, or doing, what I feel my purpose is, even if I wouldn't have thought that I could do that in a company like this.
Yeah. Well, we have, as cheesy as this is going to sound, I swear I've said this a million times. You've heard it ad nauseum. I mean, my whole idea when we first started the company, this silly little slogan, I want to make a bunch of money and give a bunch of money away. And we really did start with it being that simple. Okay. So imagine if you're interviewing at different jobs and you have your choices. I might go here, I might go there. If you were to listen, if the company, one of the companies that you interviewed with was talking about, hey, we're going to take what we do, and not only are we going to be excellent, we're going to love on our customers, we're going to do a really good job, but we're also going to do some cool things with those profits rather than, some guy living in a mansion somewhere collecting more and more, so to speak. We want to do something good with it. And, really, I don't want to plug it too much, but my personal passion kind of grew out of my experience. I go to a country called Myanmar. There's been lots of people in Evansville that have gone on mission trips to this country in Myanmar. And that shaped so much of who I am and kind of my priorities, I would say. But then also just to see how far a small amount of money or even a small amount of time, relatively speaking, can make just a huge, huge impact. And I'm talking like eternal impact. I'm not saying tomorrow, for the rest of your life kind of impact. So that's really what I strive for, what is important to me and what I wanted the whole company to be about. And I think people, whether our language really reflects that, hopefully Ryan does so much better than I do. But, if people can sense that about us and know that that's what this company is really about. Yeah. They have options. Everybody has options, right? I could work here. I could work there. Really banding together about a common desire to do something good. I don't know, again, I keep using the word significant, but that's significant. And, that's what we strive for.
Yeah.
Well, in our interviews, like he said that's it's the first part of our interview that we talk about, like, is the who we are. Like, you step into here, you need to be okay knowing that, like, what we do is we make a bunch of money so we can give a bunch of money away. That's at the end of the day, the goal. So you're going to see community service opportunities. You're going to see us sharing on our screens, some different things that we've been able to fund and do and be a part of. And you're going to see those things because that's the culture that we want to build. And we also, part of that, just to kind of continue to answer on that, is, and we have an employee-funded give-back fund that people can have auto-deduct out of their check that goes towards, significant things that happen in our employees' lives, and they may need some help and some support financially. It could be, I think we've had a couple of funerals we've had to fund where, like, both grandparents died on the same night and things like that. And there's just been several different things like that, food, stuff like that, medical bills. There's just a lot of things that been able to do, but that's been funded by CrossPoint employees that are. Right. So when you start to hear, when I see an interview, that's when I start to see people's eyes light up. They're like, is this real? Type of a thing. And again, I don't think it goes back to how amazing CrossPoint or how amazing Ben is, but it goes back to kind of this culture of generosity that we're trying to build for the greater good of helping people, grow and be better and, building up Evansville as a whole.
Yeah. It sounds like it's something that everybody who's a part of the company participates in. So whenever you say, it's not just Ben or it's not just the company, it's a culture. That's like, culture is something that everybody in the group participates in. It's not top down or anything like that. It's something that everybody is together in on. So I'm curious, Ryan, as you're fairly new in this role, what were some of the things as you were like learning that culture, even knowing kind of what to expect? Were there things that surprised you as you were like meeting with employees or, anything that stuck out to you as kind of like man, this is a cool thing that I get to be a part of now kind of a moment?
Yeah, I think my whole entire role has been that. I'm not gonna lie. Like, what I mean by that is, when I tell people about what I do, what's your role? I'm an HR manager, and they're like, HR? Like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, let's just throw your stereotypical definitions of that out, because one of the things that we talked about early on in my role, and this, I have to say, this surprised me pretty big. Him and Matt as well, our COO, both were very big on this idea that it's always people over policy, right? And it's always, we want to take care of our people, and we know we have to do things a certain way. We know there's things that have to be done, but if there's ways that we can truly make an impact on people by how we deal with them professionally, it's important. And one example was, I think it was my second week. There was one situation to where there was somebody that was missing more work than normal. Just some things were going on that just kind of raised a red flag. And the question wasn't, how do we fire this person? The question was, hey, something's going on in this person's life that's causing these absences. Let's go find them. Let's go talk to them, figure out what's going on. How can we help get you better so that, we can kind of continue to move forward on what we're trying to do, but also what you're trying to do. And then that surprised me. I've just never heard that at one time. And I think that's how those types of things are reminders of how I really do believe that's like a God-sized vision that's so much bigger than, myself, CrossPoint, Ben, any one organization or person. It's just this God-sized vision that changes people deeply. And when I say that, I mean, like, we got it's like 6th best place to work in manufacturing in the state of Indiana. We went up and got this award, and we saw reviews on places like Glassdoor of people that have been let go, terminated, giving us positive reviews about working at our place. and so there's this, when you talk about this culture, there's participation in the culture that goes so much deeper than whether it's just a give back fund or just trying to do good things or whatever. It's across the board that I think people love and respect and are drawn to at least the goals of what we want to make happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say help empower the marginalized, I thought it was really cool, some of the things that you guys do in intentionally hiring, and then how that goes back into the community. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, we always say that we're a second chance employer, and I don't know that I ever really knew what that meant. I think it's a somewhat known phrase around
15th chance employer.
right. Well, that's what I was going to get at, is that I'm not sure that really describes who we are, because I think it's a little bit more robust than just first, second, third chances. There's a deeper desire for everybody, especially in leadership, that I know. And when I say, I mean all the way even at supervisor levels, I believe there's a unified desire in seeing people's lives being fully restored. I believe that. And I just know when I hang out with, whether it's myself and Ashton, or whether Ben and I are talking, or whoever it is, I believe that there's this underlying current of a desire to see people's lives changed for the better and impacted for the positive. And what we know,
see their value, to see their value,
and to see their value,
that it's been buried or whatever, with however many times incarcerated, addiction, time in rehab, whatever it is, their value is just buried underneath that stuff, and just to know that it's there and recognize that.
Yeah. And so we, when we're able to kind of be there for, like I was able to be there for one of our employees in the middle of a relapse, and I was able to be, and you're talking about, and I've done a lot of those types of things in pastoral work, but I don't know that I expected to do that here, if I'm being honest. And
welcome to CrossPoint.
That's exactly right. And I feel right at home doing that. I mean, there's a very specific calling on somebody that wants to pastor at a church. And I'm very much, that itch gets 100% scratched, to use a Kentucky word there, in doing what I get to do, because there's people that have been to a place, and I believe they come and they hear us talk, and when they say, no, you can move forward. We can go, your past is what it was. It's what it was. But let's start here and let's try to rebuild and move on. I think it's a really, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. And I think, having an employer who has that kind of relationship with you can be a really, that's like a very significant life-changing thing, I think, for a lot of people, because, once those things start to stack up, it becomes very difficult to find a job. But then also, I think then the tolerance for, making mistakes or, whatever, is pretty low sometimes as well, because as a business, you're trying to worry about the bottom line, and, you have to have employees that are productive and things like that. And so to make the extra investment to help walk somebody along that journey doesn't just help them in that moment with the job that they have with you, but it also, helps with future employment that they might have, or it kind of like, opens up a whole bunch of new opportunities. So that's really cool.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear how this goes out into the community as well. I know when we talked earlier, you said that you ask your employees kind of what makes them tick, what I think you used the phrase like fire in their bellies. Or,
that's another Kentucky thing. I think
that's God's country.
Or
God's country, guys.
Phrase, the holy discontent, all those sort of phrases. How have you seen kind of turning them, that inward passion outward? And even for you, like the places you've partnered with in Evansville, what kind of needles are you trying to move in the community, that kind of thing?
That's really been another kind of almost somewhat surprising kind of thing. You talk about things that surprise you. Is community partnerships are something that I've been able to work on for a really long time, kind of in my professional career so far. And so, whether you're partnering with schools and trying to get, we're always as churches trying to connect to places, trying to make all these connections and network and all that stuff. So we're essentially trying to do some of the same stuff. I really like one thing that I've heard Ben say several times is that we want to make it to where that every kid, in Evansville has the same chance as Ryan Nunn's kid or Ben Schmidt's kid, So I put my kids' names in there. And I really like that because I have a particular we can call it a love, I guess, for connecting with schools because I've had deep connections with the most under-resourced schools in Henderson for a long time. And I've watched and heard some pretty heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching stories about some of the things that those kids go through. And so I've been able to go connect with principals and EVSC, and we've even been, hanging out with, places like Dream Center and stuff like that the other day, all under the auspice of saying, hey, we want to take this kind of culture that we're trying to build, and we want to take our culture and put it into action, right? So we know that it's cool to build a culture and have this inside culture that does cool stuff and yada, yada, yada. But I think the dream is bigger than that in the sense that how do we take, how do CrossPoint people take our culture and invest it in people in like Jacobsville,
right?
Or, some neighborhood or in a school or a school, however that would work. Yeah. Because in some of these under-resourced areas, it seems as though a lot of the people, clientele that we hire and that are coming through our workforce tend to be people that were raised in those types of scenarios. And so the way I interpret what I've seen thus far, and you can add to it or correct it or whatever, is that we're being proactive in trying to engage the future whenever we engage the next generation. And so if we can take our culture and we can multiply it into the next generation, it may take a few decades, maybe when we're already dead, but at some point in time, hopefully we can see, or somebody can see the difference that CrossPoint left.
Yeah, that's really cool. It sounds kind of like what you're saying is you have a lot of people within your company already who kind of reflect the neighborhoods that you guys are trying to partner with and invest in. And so as they become part of the culture, then that investment becomes like a natural part of their participation in that, right? The things that they're passionate about, the relationships that they have, that it just kind of naturally leads that direction. And that idea of investing in the future too. Can you talk about that a little bit more from like an employer standpoint of, because there's a lot of conversations in Evansville right now around workforce development and kind of the future of the workforce in Evansville. And so do you see that investment in neighborhoods and in kids who might not have the same opportunities as Ryan Nunn's kids? Do you see that as, also benefiting kind of on an economic and industry level as well, Evansville as a whole, like our city as a whole?
Yeah, for sure. That's the short answer.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I apologize. I'll come right back to that and promise I'll give you an answer. But one thing that strikes me is you talked about those, they probably did come from there. I mean, we literally talked to every one of our employees, right? And just said, hey, you referenced it just a little bit, Adrian, the holy discontent or whatever you want to call it. And we heard things from addiction to incarceration to all of these problems that people were trying to overcome. And that's really part of what kind of, when we looked at that, we didn't want to take a shotgun approach. So we didn't want to, try to do 20 different things.
Sure.
And do them as well as we could. We really said, hey, let's do one or two things and try to do that really well, or pour, all of our kind of focus and concentration and resources and all that.
But you're saying that those one or two things were kind of driven by listening to everybody in the company.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And that's how I was going to tie it into your question.
Okay.
That's right. It's because those people that we have, people that have been incarcerated and that are still fight addiction. Ryan referenced that. So, of course, they're going to have a heart or a passion to try to help others not go where they've had to go. So part of it is past, but it's definitely about the future. And it's about, hey, how can we not have this situation again? For sure, the goal is, a generation, 2 generations, however long it is. That there's no more, we don't have to hire people that have gone through that because they never went through it in the first place. But you talk about having an energized and a workforce and a kind of a common passion and dream and wanting to go in the same direction. Yeah, I mean, you got to listen to the people and find out what they're passionate about. You know? And if you do that, then you got buy-in and you got
well, and it sounds like that's kind of a reflection of what you mentioned earlier, recognizing that everybody on your team has value and dignity as a human being, and not only that, but they have something to offer. And I think that's a theme that comes up a lot in these conversations is the people we meet who are like really for Evansville and they're helping our city flourish, helping people in our city flourish. They have recognized that the way to do that is not to say, man, I have something really valuable and I'm going to offer it to other people and make their lives better, but rather to say, everybody in our city has something valuable to offer.
For sure.
And I can add a lot more value to our city by just helping them discover that and helping to empower them to bring what they have to the table. And so to do that in a company context is both really cool and really brilliant, but it also makes a lot of sense, right? Because that's kind of what a company does, is it empowers people to do work in the community and produce something of value. And you guys have just kind of expanded your way of doing that beyond just plastic pellets, right? So, that's really cool.
It's funny you put it that way, because I always kind of just push this plastic pellets thing off to the side, and talk about this other stuff, which honestly is a lot more fun for me.
Sure.
But I do want to stress that we really take excellence serious about what we do. It's not like, okay, so we're going to go. People might have the opinion that, well, yeah, if you go get an addict, they call them, whatever slang, whatever demeaning term you can, somebody get them out of jail, whatever you want to say, that you might just automatically suffer in your quality, so to speak, the quality of your work, or they're not going to show up on time. Or
I'd be better off to hire somebody who hasn't had that experience.
Yeah, give me a college degree, give me this, give me this, give me this, for sure. I just want to point out that we don't suffer any of that, or we don't compromise on any of that. And it's this whole "it takes a village," kind of thing, that we hold each other accountable. And any one person for sure could torpedo something if they had a bad day or whatever. But we have a robust enough family and systems that I like to say that you have to make sure your percentage of influencers is at the right concentration, as opposed to people that need to be influenced or that are looking for influence or ways to change. So, but if you have that system right. It just kind of naturally flows.
Yeah, I want to highlight or pull out what you guys were saying already of the listening to kind of the common needs, because you can't, like you said, everybody might have a different thing that they want to do or an impact they make, but there are, if you are listening, those common denominators of where are our strengths. And if we do have a lot of people incarcerated, or we do have a lot of people that have an addiction past, how can we help them help other people that have been in that? And the reality is they're better equipped than we are,
for sure,
that haven't experienced that, to speak into those. And so you're using their past experiences and empowering them to change that so other people don't have to experience that. But I think that businesses for sure can learn from you guys, and I want to talk about that in a little bit. But also, I want to point out that churches, I don't know of a church, maybe your church did, but did you listen to your people and ask, what's the common thread in our congregation that we have a common denominator we can speak into in our city? Like what fire does every individual person sitting in that pew or in that seat, like what fires in their belly? So it's almost, usually we take like what church model and how can a business apply to it. But I'm really thinking the other way around of your business model. How can churches do that and say, what's the strength of our people and how can we contribute?
And what are they passionate about?
How can we contribute? So I think that's a really cool thing that you're doing there.
Yeah, I think the answer is going to be no, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to say no. We didn't necessarily pull our people, but I think the way we got there, I don't think is wrong. Like I think the way we got to where like we were going to focus our community outreach was kind of the per capita the most under-resourced, underprivileged areas of our city, and then go try to build up from there. However, now that we're talking about it, I'm not sure I've thought about it quite like that. It almost seems like that may be a way to establish some sort of a strategy, or at least identify a location or identify a specific skill set that you would do if you were in a church context. I think everything's been so data-driven for so long, which I think is a good thing. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, you can present kind of data that to spark people's thoughts or prayer lives or whatever, and then we can go talk to the people, and then yada yada. So I really enjoyed that. That made my brain kind of explode a little bit. That's good. Yeah. Thank you.
That's interesting.
I would point out too, just in the church's defense. I mean, we have 72 people. Okay, so it's a little easier to manage from a
and
just
to find that
logistics
or whatever.
For sure.
Yeah,
and they're getting paid to come, so
that's true.
They'll be there the next
that
day.
Helps
If they want to pay.
That helps too.
There are different dynamics, but it's a great point. It's how do you think about how vulnerable people are, and I've have the same past. Okay, by the way, so when you first come out of addiction or you were arrested or whatever, you are in a vulnerable place. Just, some people are stronger than others, and there's all that, but not only are you susceptible to fall back into whatever issues, there's the shame, there's all of these things, that you deal with. So when you pointed out that we kind of look at, I don't know that I could say for sure, just because I'm not a therapist myself, whether somebody who's been in addiction is better suited to help somebody come to a long-term success. Sure. But what I can tell you for sure is they are much more relatable and in a better place to help get them over that initial susceptibility to fall, just that shame that how can I fit in somewhere? This has been so long, that kind of thing. So
sure.
So I'm curious if I'm a business owner who's listening to this episode, and I'm hearing all this about culture, and I'm just excited about it, and I'm like, this is great. I would love to do something like this with my company. Or the second part of that question, I'm an employee who is part of a company, and I'm like, man, I would love it if our company had more of this kind of culture and this way of thinking. Do you guys have recommendations maybe on here are some places that I would start, either as a business owner or even just as an employee, to help introduce some of this kind of culture, to help my employees or my coworkers think a little bit bigger about what we do as a company and the opportunities that we have as a group of people who spend a lot of time together and, work together to do whatever it is our company does. What are some questions that you can ask, or some first steps that you can take to begin to explore the who we are piece and to develop that a little bit more?
I'll go first, and I'll tell you how we did it, just because we're not that smart, and it really is simple. So my answer to your question, we literally just went and broke bread. We just had a meal together, one-on-one, not big groups of people, one-on-one, took every employee, and they got to choose the restaurant. We just went out to eat and said, hey, I described it as, you mentioned the Christian term, the Bill Hybels book, The Holy Discontent. But, what's your Popeye moment? What is it that upsets you? What do you hear a word or think about a thought, and it just makes your stomach tense up, or you want to cry or scream, or what? God has gifted us all and given us all different passions and ways of looking at things. What is it that wrecks you? And then we simply took that list and tallied it, and then looked for common denominators. And by the way, as I was talking to each one of them, I said, look, I'm going to tell you now that we're probably not going to end up doing exactly what, if you want to build a skate park, I love skate parks. It's awesome. But that may not be what we end up doing. Or you want to go serve at this AA meeting and help people through addiction. That may not be exactly what we do. Yeah. But what I promise you I will do is listen to you. Okay, and look, I'm writing it down so I don't forget it, And we kind of crafted this just huge thing. Okay, this is, at the time, I think it was 65 different responses we got, and all these different ideas. to answer one of your questions, I think you better be prepared to listen, okay? Because people can pick up so easily on, your BS meter. You better be real with people, or they're going to pick up on it, and you're going to be worse off than that. Don't even bother if you're not going to be ready to do it. But if you are, be ready to listen. And then once you've listened, then I think you do seek input. To me, it can get awfully diluted if you're going to have big town halls, so to speak, and everybody speaking to it. I wouldn't suggest that personally. I try to craft it then into like 3 main ideas and say, hey guys, does this sound right? Is this what you said? Yeah, that's right. Do you agree that it fits into these buckets, kind of thing? And then we had a leadership team about us. We call it our leadership team. That then just said, hey, we really want to get this down to one statement, and that's the one that Ryan referred to, level the playing field for every child. Then once you do that, that's when it gets fun, right? We don't reinvent the wheel. We're working with all kinds of different organizations. Oh, yeah. We make plastic pellets. This is not, we're not claiming to be the best at any of this. And people have given their lives to studying and brainstorming and thinking about what are the best solutions.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really valuable takeaway too, is it's really easy to identify that thing that you're passionate about and then jump right to, here's the response that I can do. Here's the thing that we can do to help make this better, without also listening to the people who are experts in solving that problem or who are already doing things in the community. So starting with what's already being done and what's working, and saying how can we come alongside and partner, I think is really valuable too. Can you speak a little bit to what led you guys to do that in partnership with schools specifically, and kind of what the nature of that partnership has looked like, and kind of how you came to decide that was a way of investing in kids in our community?
Yeah, for sure. And again, it goes back a little bit to where all these different responses, right? And everybody having awesome passions and really good stuff that they wanted to do, and trying to find a commonality. How do we try to involve everyone? How do we scratch everyone's itch, so to speak? Quite honestly, practically speaking, how do we do something that is going to fire everybody up and keep them engaged and make them feel like they're doing something meaningful? I eventually got to the question, like, okay, so do you think you would have ended up in jail had your childhood been different? Would you have ended up in addiction if you had these opportunities in school? And every one of them, that's what we eventually, as we thought, continue to process through it. That's really where we boiled it down, was rather than fight it after it's already happened, how can we prevent it from happening in the first place? Yeah. And that's when education obviously comes out of that. That's everybody's like, oh yeah, I can get on board with that for sure. Let's level the playing field. This whole thing about everybody having the same opportunity as Ben Schmidt's, that people might think my kids got silver spoons, right? They go to North High School, their daddy owns a company, all that stuff. Well, we want this guy's kids to have the exact same chances to succeed in life. Yeah. And that means they're going to have the same opportunities at education, extracurriculars, all of these things. So that just then naturally led to, okay, so how are we going to try to level that playing field? Well, at the school level is probably going to be where there's a lot of organizations already doing good things. B, it's where they're all together, right? Rather than maybe trying to go meet each kid, if you thought that way, try to meet each kid in their home. And then quite honestly, we have a lot of people, my mom was a teacher, we have a lot of people that are personally, your mom too, personally invested in education. We're like, okay, God, I get it. This feels right. Yep, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. So there was a lot of alignment there. For sure. What are some of the things that you guys have done that have come out of that? Like some examples of ways that you've invested in schools or partnered with schools. Yeah.
Well, I'm still kind of new, so I've missed some of this stuff. However, we have been able to, like, I went and met with several different principals just to hear kind of, I always ask what I call the Harry Potter question. Success guaranteed, money is no option. I could wave a wand.
Yeah.
What would change? That's if I could wave my wand and make it what it was.
Yeah.
And those are fun conversations because teachers love that. And our principals love that stuff. They get to dream a little bit, kind of think about it. And I love listening to them. I don't know. I'm a dork. I can't help it. I just really like that stuff. So I went to, AIS out here in the Old North and was talking to their principal, and she just kind of in passing mentioned a logo on the front that would help provide for like security. And there was an incident there that got handled and all that stuff. But and it turned out to be this one way that we could serve every child in that school. I know it's middle school and high school, but they're children, right? That's how this works.
Right.
By taking $700 or $800 and helping get a logo placed on the front of the school. And what that in turn has done is it's brought familiarity from CrossPoint to them, from me to them. And so now we communicate. We've got some onboarding opportunities. I think didn't we install some gates or something over at Delaware?
We did. Yeah.
At one time. And what we're looking to do is really find ways to impact not just the kids, but the kids through the teachers, right? So if we can do things to help, like when I was in Henderson, one of the things we did just 5 years ago, I don't know if maybe 6 years ago, it's a while back, but one of the things that we did was at the hardest school in town, we totally revamped their the teachers' break room.
Oh, yeah.
And, here we are 5-6 years later, and I still run into these people at Walmart, like still loving that break room. And it's because that was one way to give the kids a better experience, was to lift up the spirits of the teachers. And so thinking just in that lens, we spent some time, at a school, and we just brought lunch, and we just literally sat there for 4 hours, and waves of teachers came in, and we asked them questions, and we talked to them, and we laughed. And, we heard stories like, one teacher had 3 children that lost their parents in one school year to murder.
Oh my gosh!
That's here, right? That's in Evansville, and so things like that these kids and then these teachers are going through, and we're trying to. The teachers are just trying to help these kids win in life, and then the kids are just trying to essentially survive, and they don't even know it. And so we're even looking at how do we help hide these dumpsters at Delaware. We've been talking about dumpsters for a long time. So, I've been trying to figure out the best way to go about doing things EVSC's way, so that we can play ball, but we do it on their terms, and we can serve in that way as well. So I think it's a holistic approach. Everything from safety to beautification to even figuring out what support even outside the school looks like, and that's where we sat down with the Dream Center last week, and even doing some of the things that they're doing will indirectly or directly, I guess in some cases, impact Delaware.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're just looking for all the ways to create the most impact as possible. Now, here coming up pretty soon, it's good. There's going to be this time to where, okay, we've talked and we've planned. It's just time to do. But right now, we're trying to look at the best steps to take so that we're not unintentionally doing the shotgun approach type thing.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and it sounds like kind of overall what you're describing is approaching those partnerships on a basis of relationship and saying, again, we want to listen, we want to understand like what's the best way for us to serve, and to not come in and try to be the hero and, do what makes sense for us, but to say, actually, the teachers and the principals and the people who are there every day serving these students, they're the ones who are making that investment on a regular basis. They're the experts. They know what these kids need. And so actually we need to be like the support to them and help them win in what they're already doing. And I think we've kind of heard that theme from a lot of really successful partnerships with schools, is approaching it with the mentality that actually the people who spend every day with these kids are going to know what to do better than you do. And so listening and saying, what can I do to help support your vision for serving these students is a good way to build their relationship, but also to find the actual best way, to make that investment.
Well, it
So I love
helps that, Vince said his mom was a teacher. My mom was a teacher.
Yeah.
My wife is a teacher. Like, there's 2 or 3 other teachers in my family. It's like, we know.
You know what it's
We
like.
got to hear all this stuff at home, when nobody else.
The good and the bad.
That's right. So, I think I don't know what good it's ever done coming in and kind of being a know-it-all or being the guy that knows everything.
Yeah,
And so,
Savior complex.
exactly. So we want to make sure that we can come with our ideas and our thoughts, but, we know that if there's a teacher that's, or like Julie, for example, if she's there, all the time, she's the leader of that place, then naturally the best way to impact that place is through her influence and leadership.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I think we try to recognize that and not come with all the best ideas, and we want to come and be like, let's do this your way kind of thing.
Yeah. That's great.
For the record, we haven't met a bad one yet, by the way. Of all the principals and teachers.
Oh, they're
seriously,
fantastic.
To be a teacher, you have to be called, right? You're probably not doing it for the money, or at least, I don't want to really get into that debate, but I think there's clear evidence that if you want to be a teacher of children, it is something that you are gifted for and that you feel a heavy responsibility to do. So, what else would we do? Try to walk in the classroom and teach them ourselves or tell jokes or whatever? Yeah. These people are clearly called to do it. They're trained to do it. And they're doing a great job. So, just blowing blowing wind in their sails, for sure.
That's really good.
Well, thank you guys so much. That's kind of time for us. I feel like we could definitely talk and pick your brain all day. But thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being for Evansville in both your just lives individually, but also your company.
Yeah. I did not get to learn nearly as much as I was hoping about plastics in this conversation, but maybe next time we can talk more about that.
Offline.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, if you're listening and you want to either continue the conversation, or we would love to I'm just going to throw out that you would love to connect with some listeners if they're interested in moving their company in this direction. You can connect with us at connect@forevansville.org. That's our email address. That'll be in the show notes. Or you can connect with us on our social media channels, website, all that kind of stuff. So thanks for listening. Thank you guys again for being here.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.